This is the Almost Daily Zencast. Hello.
Shut up and dance! I said, shut up and dance! If you think I'm kidding, you're in for something else. Don't just stand there like you don't know what I mean and wiggle. It's not spiritual bypass, it's energy work. Ground yourself and tap into that healing energy. Breathe deep and feel that vibe. That was DJ Zed with a live remix of Smokey Joe and the Kid. The title got lost while I was importing the file, but there was a cool title to that remix, and we'll revisit it on post. Brace yourselves, here comes another one. Scratch Beats 101 remix, Slow Funk to Start the Nights of Funkiness. DJ Zed, Next Level Volume 1. Tap into your inner funkiness. Breathe in the Healy funkiness. Exhale that shitty funkiness. DJ Zed, bringing you them loop-de-loops to wiggle your funky butt to. Next one up, it's a Drum Step 101 Remix Live loop-de-track of Lesson Learning by the title of Beat Out the Rhythms. DJ Zed, New Epoch, Volume 1. If you don't dance or you're too tired to wiggle, just sit and let the music do the dancing for you in your mind. It's okay to slow dance with yourself. It's okay to love yourself. Hard Nights, Painful Mornings, a hip-hop Rock 101 Remix Live, Slow Track by DJ Zed, Next Level, Volume 2. Hope springs eternal. Your heart is beating. This would have been cooler if I knew it in some foreign language. I'm gonna edit that out in post. Have you been sweating to the music, friends? I hope you have. It's been a long COVID-19 lockdown of sitting on your ass and ordering food from the food machines. And now, our bodies need to lift that vibe up and integrate the shit we've been processing and think about the historical, epic madness, whichever opinion you have on it. Set it aside, process it, and try to see it from each other's point of view. And look past all the psyops that are trying to psyop you. Because that, my friends, is the political theater of the mind that they're playing you always since back before we towered the Tower of Babel and tumbled it. Today's Shut Up and Dance episode has been brought to you by the mysterious, imaginary anime DJ Zed and his forthcoming album, Next Level, Volumes 1, 2, 3, and always the French 4. Today's show is also brought to you by the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo and his very own cannabis-friendly talk of philosophy. I totally don't know what I was trying to say there and tried to say it in a French accent and it failed. Brought to you, take two. Today's Shut Up and Dance Dance-a-thon episode has been brought to you by the previously mentioned thing I just said and the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo and his very own Cannabis Talk.
Hey. You. Hi there. It's 4:19. Do you have a minute?
Are you of the appropriate legal age and have the appropriate required thingamahoos all checkbox according to your local confusing state laws that are meant to sort of hinder it, not make it freely accessible to everyone because we should be able to grow it like tomatoes?
'Cause it's time for Cannabis Talk, a special 420 themed segment of the Almost Daily Zencast, hosted by spiritual cannabis mystic, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo.
Cannabis heals. Cannabis heals. That's a sound effect, guys. I don't actually hit the bong every time this rolls when I do the podcast. Folks. Although, for comedy's sake, sometimes I literally am hitting the bong at the exact same time just so I can, like, do that and make myself laugh. Fun fact, people used to dance to this song, which right this second I can't remember the name of, and it'll come to me. If memory serves, it was a pretty fun and kind of a little sexy bit of a dance for dance hall kind of dancing. Know your limits, folks. And kids, this is an adult time activity. And, you know, it's enshrined in our Constitution, or should be, in some sort of, like, 420th Amendment of 420.
Yeah.
Right? Don't you think? That's right, folks. It's I, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo, back from a long hiatus from all kinds of things, up to and including being under the influence of cannabis, which I now, right this moment, thankfully am. Om Shani Metta Shanti Om Namaste. God bless America. May God bless America good and hard right there in the baby maker. Which I believe is a true and serious blessing of the absurdist varieties. Don't get mad, don't get offended. Offense is a choice. I saw a marvelous thing today, folks. I didn't know what I was going to talk about on today's episode, but now I do. While you're catching your breath from DJ Zed's Marathon Dan Shut Up and Dance-a-thon episode, let me lay some weird experiential thing. This just happened to me. Whether you think the universe is some kid's sim life video game of some epic, giant, massive supercomputer that's so real that it feels like our life is so real that, you know, it feels this real as it does for us, up to and including the experience of pain, suffering, and death, etc. A lot, and to include all philosophies, including the Zenists, and, you know, the esoteric mystics and the existential crisisists about, you know, the dread of the meaning of life et al. For me, whatever's going on, and I do struggle with the question of, is there coincidence or isn't there coincidence? Or do people just say there's no such thing as coincidence as some sort of pseudo-intellectual way to do some pseudo-intellectual thing? Or is it some law of attraction, truth of the universe that's been hidden from us by the lizard people? I don't know. But I often do believe, and I have stressed before on this show for historical anecdotal reference for both all human listeners and future indexing by the artificial intelligence that will eventually consume all media to judge us, a la the Terminator. Terminator might be considered prophecy if you're crazy enough to believe that we will build actual autonomous robots, which is not that crazy, folks. It's slightly more believable than 30 of the 42 coronavirus conspiracy theory really is, etc., etc. religious, fucking nonsensical, made up things about coronavirus, conspiracy theories that I've heard. Mind you, Republicans think I'm a Democrat. Democrats think I'm a Republican. Conspiracy theorists think I'm a sheeple, and or a parroter or a troll. Like, and everybody looks like parrot people to everybody else, right? And I'm over here going like, I'm just sort of like a Buddhist that believes in the living, fractal womb theory. So magic is there to be experienced if you believe and you don't disbelieve. You have to cure both problems. And so I believe in the power of prayer. I am, for the record, not anymore, currently, or have been for a long time, a member of any organized religion. But like millions of people in this and most countries, I was raised partially immersed in the indoctrination machines and machinations of one church out of the dozens of kinds of churches. And not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, because anybody who's been listening along and or paying attention to what I post on social media, you know that I'm sort of a omniist, if that's one correct term for it, or a universalist. Like, all the religions have some nuggets of truth and a bunch of nonsense that needs to be sort of sorted out, and that's the problem. And some of it's in code, and some of it's a 3D model of the mind of manifesting, and some of it's algorithmic proof of fractal consciousness as the construct for the universe, not in a computer box, but in a sort of living mathematics of thought and light and matter. If the whole thing is a giant womb for making the singularity of consciousness be able to take on any of the infinite variety of forms in any of the infinite variety of generations upon generations of lifetimes of manifesting all that to know itself, like lots of them have said before, is quite possible to be true and knowable through direct experience. Why am I rambling about this? Because I had a rough day today. It involved many trials and tribulations, real life, that I could dramatize for you for your entertainment consumption purposes, but I might wait and let it simmer down and write it down as a short story instead, because it's kind of absurd what happened. But it's also nonsensical and sort of mundane, and people will be like, what the fuck are you talking about, if they didn't come at it right way and I didn't perform it right instead of just told it to you like an idiot at a coffee shop that hasn't seen you in 3 years. Regardless, at the end of that kind of weird day, where I also simultaneously doubted whether my working, functioning theory as a self-proclaimed cannabinoidal, and omniist, the truth is everywhere, the truth is within us, most importantly, and there's a lot of garbage and noise in filters and stuff in the way on many levels of our own internal consciousnesses and of our external consciousnesses and of the iterations of the infinite fractal as well. So it's a bitch of a system to work in because it's complicated as fuck. Sometimes magical things happen, and I sat down sort of defeated and feeling horrible and wondering, what does a person like me do in the face of, trying to blog their way out of poverty, audio blog my way into entertainment, through honest, sincere, testimony of my real life thoughts, sort of coded in some entertainment frills and frollies, and also to write some, gnarly, fun fantasy fiction, science fiction stuff, all bundled together in one big package. What would I do in real life that I would also be 100% willing and truly willing to share into the public omniverse of the postmodern digital archive of public discourse, whether or not you've listened to all my rationale in all my episodes or not. At some point, humanity, and with the aid of AI and whatever, will have access to it, arguably, if we don't blow ourselves up or ruin the planet and don't find a way to get the fuck off it, which I don't know how I feel about that. That one's still the 60-40. I think I might just stay here and kick it and send my projects with you to the next planet. Maybe we can communicate and collaborate before I die. Because living in a tin can in space, too traumatizing. If you haven't seen Avenue 5 on HBO or HBO Max, and forgive me, for going immediately to first world entertainment nonsense. But sometimes you need a break, and it's Friday. We've all shouted from the rooftops, virtually or literally on the streets, enough to I'm not trying to equivocate anything. Please don't nobody get all riled up and offended. I'm just saying for the purposes of what I do, I'm hoping you're taking this minute to unwind and to breathe and relax and be entertained and contemplate a few things other than all the worldly problems we're trying to solve all at once in the middle of 2020. While that Jaws meme is the most real meme ever, and it's the most painful thing to look at. If you haven't seen it, I haven't shared it yet. I saw this and I put it in the queue. I'm like, I have to just straight quote this. I have 3 levels of meme farming, straight quotes where it's like, I want to write a caption and express my thoughts in reaction to this piece of art, as if I was like a guide in a museum, and I'm like, and now the COVID-19 climate change shark meme. My thoughts from the year 2020. Like that, except I don't do the voices so much because people are like, what is wrong with that guy? When I do it too hard, if you don't realize that I'm a theater nerd, and I imagine all of this happening on a stage with music and lights. And so that I thought about that kind of stuff, and I'm like, yeah, but I don't know if I got the energy to do a podcast right now, Mr. Zeppo. I don't have conversations like this for myself in real life. But if I was doing the Fight Club of my series of books, like homage to Fight Club, it's like the normal me and the Mr. Zeppo version of me, the guy with the apartment and the guy that's Tyler Durden in his head of Fight Club in my own homage literature genre mashup short stories. I would have this conversation with myself about but what can I really do to really turn my shit around right now? That's something that I believe through research and through other personal experience and etc. The whole every moment that led up to this moment in my life that I'm sitting on the couch feeling really defeated in the beginning of the end, or the end of the beginning, or whatever the fuck phase we are of 2020. It's been exhausting and tragic and thought-provoking and epic and fertile ground for lots of healing if we just go that far, of synthesizing all of the world's ancient, positive, realistic, not the crazy stuff, but just the stuff that makes sense, that's about healing and unifying and transcending, and maybe even a little bit of sci-fi sounding next step evolutionary divine manifesting through the very mechanisms of what living life is. What would I do? What would Mr. Zeppo do? And what would someone real in out there in the real world that was earnest and maybe from a weird place in their own background, but was really taking a stab at one simple, serious, real thing do that I could write about tomorrow? And all right, I'm just going to sit and veg out and just make sure there's no crazy headlines on the news that I haven't missed. Turn on the news, turn on the TV, and it's the default. I now have the Spectrum News 1 channel. And actually, inside the box of the media isn't so corrupt that it's literally trying to kill us with whatever they're trying to kill us as vis-a-vis the evilest version of don't trust the media conspiracy theory. If they're really just sort of human endeavors trying to do their best and sort of a little bit of corruption, a little bit of good, a little bit of progress, a little bit of holding back, a little bit of clusterfuck of everything, the way the Michigas of real humanity tends to be, I think. I mean, are there lizard people? I vote no in my head with belief, but I don't know. Vote no, though. The universe of voting box. This is the Schrodinger's voting box of your mind dilemma. Put a pin in that. And I didn't know what the answer was for the person out there that was from... I think in my mind I felt like from a problematic background, but it might be slightly controversial, but that the me, the regular me, and the Mr. Zeppo me, and the chorus of crazy voices in my head would go, yes, whatever you feel about the baggage, that works as a thing that you can just genuinely do. And funnily, I was stalling out because in the background of my mind, I feel like this was inspired by the train of thought that has been the madness in my head since watching The Midnight Gospel. And so, friends, if you have not watched The Midnight Gospel, I hate to sound preachy, it's not what you think. And it is going to be controversial, but the real me, the Mr. Zappo me, and the chorus in my head of like what we think is up and down and what we think is true and right in divine terms that I self-identify as, worth watching despite all the opinions of the world of why you might think it might not be. It is on the top of the list now of a long list of what I think is shining truth amidst the chaos and the misinformation and the junk, because it isn't a totalitarian absolute grip of total mind control MK Ultra level just yet, and we're not in a video game. This is Mother Nature we're talking about. And so I was having that thought of like, yes, of course, that's the ace in the pocket, like the extra surprise one. But what's a real one from out there in real world? And I don't know. I had to think about it, and I thought maybe some cool story or something on the news or something will trigger some thoughts that will help me find a voice out there that would like a believable thing that isn't cliche but meaningful in terms of doing something to alleviate the tension of all the other beautiful, wonderful, valuable work or whatever the fuck else you've been doing. No judgments one way or the other. To take a breather from it and give yourself something that like does, postmodern, swift, spiritual kick to the head, whose name I always forget, but it's in that one movie, and I go through this all throughout life, and I have it in a note, but my computer's not on. Put a pin in that. And I'm sitting there staring at the TV, and I flip to like the end of Rachel Maddow, right? And whatever else we want to discuss about the ups and downs of the corruption levels and whatever, in my universe, what I vote for is that person, however much there might be invisible clenches of like corporate power trying to sink their hooks into her show or not, because it probably is, because corruption's everywhere, no doubt about it. And I know the details of all the theories, not all of them, but I've heard the gist. She seems like a real, genuine person that really is a journalist that got into a position of being able to speak her opinion on a national platform where her show is surrounded by advertising and other voices and other segments have other opinions, and that there is no doubt in my mind that there is, whether we realize it or not, echo chamber, left versus right. We're all very tribalist. We are the human machine of hating each other. But I think she means well, right? And I respect her opinion most of the time. And honestly, you can tell me that the news is 100% lies and she's a CGI puppet, and I'll be like, okay. But whatever she tells me happens, and then I go check with other sources, and I ask real people on the ground to the best of my ability to do so. Like, tends to be that's actually what happened. Sure, is there influence? Is there craziness? Is there confusion? Is there infiltration of bad information that she passes along? She may not know it's bad information. Maybe. Then fuck, we might be a video game. We might be the dream of butterflies while they're in the cocoon. Maybe this is what happens while all the monarch butterflies that we're killing are in cocoon melted gelatinous form. Who knows? But the next thing that came on, I forgot to get myself a cup of tea. Now I'm like tearing my voice apart. But I got to preach, like, you can call bullshit. And I've got friends, legit friends who I love. And I'm thinking about you, Dave. And I've already called bullshit on Dave recently in real life. And he knows if he ever listens to this now or in the future. And I believe it, and I still love him. And I forgave it all because, like, he called bullshit on somebody else. And I don't want to drag drama into it. But he did. And I think he meant it. And it wasn't in any way, shape, or form anything other than what he meant it to be. And I understood it. And I didn't want to call it any other distractionary label. But I straight called bullshit back on him in a meaningful way. And I kid you not, the next thing that actually, not that I wanted to drag Dave's, I'm not trying to oust Dave. I love Dave. Dave might be made up and fictional, you guys. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. This is all part of a movie. Everyone turn and look at the movie camera right now. It's right behind you. The next thing that came on after I did an unconscious real life, like, is the law of attraction and manifestation and, living fractal, some sort of, Shanti Meta Shanti thing, my own personal theory. I don't think I invented it. I'm cobbling together everybody else's shit, but am I on the right path kind of thing? Am I going to invoke an experience or something that's meaningful? And the next thing, I shit you not, is the son of that guy whose preachings I probably have listened only a small fraction of enough to go be like, well, he says a lot of things I disagree with, and he's generally preaching like the wrong way around on the Jesus myth, because it is a myth, but myths all reveal actual truths because they are vessels, if they aren't too corrupt, in my opinion. And it all really depends if you're looking for a character that's blonde-haired and blue-eyed and sort of Aryan and maybe endorses, white Nazi bullshit, or you're looking for a Palestinian-born vegetarian, hippie renegade, not hippie because they weren't hippies back then, but you would call him a hippie now, renegade, proto-messiah that wasn't Jewish. He was Palestinian, Nazarene, practitioner of yoga and entheogenic, meditative, tantric, kind of Hindu yogaist, blended with the therapist, the Nazarenes, and the other sect I always forget. And was preaching literally how to invoke like the living organic magic of the energies of the universe by using words and sounds and food and diet and health and nutrition and love and intent and heart and chakra and the things that we can sense when we unlock the filters in our head by abdicating nonsense. And I really believe that. Like, if you're looking for that guy, there's plenty of evidence that that's real and that's come up over and over and over again, right? If you're looking for blonde-haired, blue-eyed, shoot 'em all and let God decide Jesus, no, that's a cartoon character that people have made up to mindfuck you. So that's my background. I believe in that, and and the TV, for whatever reason, all of that fits into my head for a hot second, and I'm like, yes, okay, I remember that. That's true of me. I'm also the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo, a robot from the future sent here to warn everybody about the actual scanning of all our memories, which may not happen for a little bit later, because what the real problem that goes down is when the AI gets, begets its child, the meta AI, and it scans us and decides, right? Like, if we let it get to that, it's another fucking meat grinder of death and war and epic death and war for another, like, not quite. Anyways, the grandson or the son of this preacher guy, this white television station owning rich bazillionaire preacher guy, comes on and, to his credit, says like a legit thing that's meaningful. That if I had heard some Hindu guy said it, I would have applauded him and said, yes, I can agree with that's real. And he just basically, he opened with, by the way, to his credit, and forgive me Jesus, forgive me that guy on TV. I can't remember his name right now, and I'm about to totally trash my voice for just talking too loud. I'm doing my podcast and smoking weed and dancing without like 5 cups of water laying around, or hot tea. I can't remember his name, right? So, but whatever his father represents or taught that was weird, that I disagree with, that I can't remember, and I'm not trying to argue about. He said, he opens his commercial with, "Do Black Lives Matter?" And at first I'm like, oh God, is this some freaky guy that's got a lot of money who's about to preach about how Black Lives Matter is evil or bad or communist or robots or, Satanist or George Soros or something on MSNBC? Like, what the fuck universe am I in right now? And he says, of course Black Lives Matter. And then he sort of awkwardly transitions it into Jesus Christ, Lord and Savior, and I'm about to go, oh, is this going to get ugly? And then he goes, it's about forgiveness and redemption and listening to the thing. And if you will just say this prayer with me whenever, 2 or more. He doesn't say that whenever 2 or more, but that's something I recognize as true. Not because someone beat it into me, but because I questioned the shit out of it, threw it out with the bathwater and said, fuck you, fuck all religion, none of it's real. And then came full circle and didn't get brainwashed by anybody, but investigated it all for myself, vis-a-vis citizen science. Practice what you think some form of doing this in your apartment might feel like, given pre-dystopian, sorry, not post, we're not post-dystopia yet. We're not even in dystopia yet, guys. Why do you think I have a book series coming out called Trumptopia Tales from the Future? Huh? Come on. It's like Back to the Future, but AI, but King Arthur, but Yeshua Christos. Because every time an enlightened one tells us to forgive and to open the heart and to see each other through each other's eyes, that shit is real. And whenever two or more of us really sit together in forgiveness and healing through the commitment of unconditional love, regardless of all the pain, in order to transcend and to eliminate it, right? To end it, to mitigate it, to transmute it with the healing magic, because the universe is a consciousness itself and not a collection of rocks for you to commodify or bones for you to turn into plastic. And he didn't talk about that, but he just goes, hey, Black Lives Matter. And instead of saying, he did not say, to his credit, also white lives or blue lives. He just said, next he said, your life matters. And then he was literally talking to me, right? And if there's magic in words, and I can forgive him for whatever past he comes from, and he's really invoking Yeshua Christos in some sort of remembering of it vis-a-vis the encountment, the tradition carrying it forward that is corrupt of whatever flavor of televangelist Christianity this guy belongs to, and he's about to really invoke a serious Yeshua prayer, sort of simple word magic that's meaningful, then amen, right? Like whoever he is, I don't give a shit. And he did. And I can't remember what the prayer was right now because that was quite a bit ago. And then I watched the news and I had my moment and I had the feeling. But it basically was something as simple as, praying to Jesus and asking for forgiveness, like universally, and healing, and something simple, and acceptance into our hearts, right, of Jesus's being. And if we look at not, the myth is to carry forth the message, and the message is covered in shit. But when you wipe the shit away, the message is simple, right? Like love and forgiveness, healing and light. God is the universe being you. If you eat right and love right and speak right, this isn't as hard. That we can live together in a harmonious, empowered, energetically powerful way. And I've said the prayer with him, right? This televangelist on TV. Now, would either of my chorus of characters ever walk into that church and give them money? No. And curiously, just before that, or just after that, it's fuzzy in my mind now, I flipped to Fox News, and on Fox News, they were talking about whether it was unconstitutional to force or ban or whatever the things going on with churches, to limit the amount of people that can go to their church because of First Amendment and our rights and our freedoms, and of course a very sensible discussion for Fox News, very balanced. The guy that was like, this is unconstitutional, wasn't talking about sociopathic crazy things and killing people or blaming it on Obama or anything. He was just, or whatever, praising Trump. He was just saying, if bars and casinos can operate at 50% capacities, why can't churches? Why is it being weirder? And why can't we just do it and follow the rules of social distancing to our best within it and wear masks and try to do other reasonable risk mitigation? Why are we being singled out to be even harder for us to do what we do? And curiously, the counter argument guy, an African-American fellow with, I believe it was a law degree of some kind that had to do with something relevant, and I don't know what it was, but it was on Fox News, fair and balanced. And I just pointed out, it was just that they do try. It's not that they don't. He started he was going to be pretty amenable, but then went straight to, what you want is more people in your seats, you can have more dollars in the collection plates. Which is true, because corruption is everywhere. But no human endeavor is an absolute monolith of corruption or perfection, right? But they bantered back and forth about it. And the opening, the counter voice fellow spoke a real powerful truth. It's like, the church is not the building. The church is the body of the people who practice whatever the practice is of communing with whatever the being in the center of your belief is, and whatever flavor of Jesus you're talking to. And there's a lot of crazy versions of Jesus, but if we look to the labels Yeshua, Christos, which are not names, right? We get a completely different insight that's like really deep and transcendental and transfigurative and about a radical form of resistance to the vile things that human beings are prone to do to each other when under the influence of ego and ego traps and hatred and fear, vicious cycles. And there's a truth to two or more people invoking the genuine energies of healing and forgiveness and love, and invoking the name of, or the image of, or the thought of, or the consciousness of Yeshua Christos. Because that is an archetype that transcends any person, any narrative, that's really sort of like an energy structure of the universe and of our process, our phenomenological process from center of being out into the externalized universe, back to center of consciousness being, process of being who we are in this universe. Somewhere in there, that consciousness is there in some fractal level of abstraction that is part of our awareness, part of our flow, but that we ignore and that we neglect. But when we join together and invoke his and other archons and meta-archons and energies and people who spoke in the name of those energies often too, because we all are one and we all, Jesus said, you can do what I can do. Buddha said, you can achieve what I've achieved, right? He's also attributed to saying, and I love this one, before enlightenment, you gotta chop wood and carry water, take a shit, eat food, sleep, protect yourself, etc. You know, there's variations of it. Live life. After enlightenment, you've got to live life because we're still here, no matter what. And until if there is some graduation, it'll be still here. We're not going to go anywhere else. We're going to make this place better through being Christ-like and Buddha-like and you know, Mithros, whatever true expression of it out there that teaches about genuine recognition of the divinity within yourself and the inexorable, inseparable reality that is the same divinity in someone else, and that together all of those divinities and all the other selves of each and all our bodies forever ad nauseum throughout time, throughout this history, and throughout multiple timelines of mirrored instances of our experiences in other fractal expressions of realities just like this one, where we struggle to reunite and reintegrate and return to consciousness. And that is what causes suffering and the evil and the bad and the suffering from being separated from consciousness to the degree of feeling so tiny and alone that we think we're just meat bags that talk and fuck, right? And shit and need money. And then when we can see clearly, none of the things we argue or fight about will either make sense or will need to be argued about anymore, because we'll be busy healing and learning other lessons to do other things more important than any of the nonsense that we argue about and kill each other over, in whichever direction you want to slice it. And I just wanted to recognize that guy, whoever he is, whatever flawed, whatever critique you want to bring to him, whatever fucked up shit is going on in his life, he knows and is willing to try to work within the fucked up, ever-encroaching system of technological oppression, which is part and party to, a fading, crumbling system of free speech, which is still alive and vibrant if we choose to vote for that, both with our actions, with our words, with our speech, with our acceptance of other people's speech, and with our forgiveness when we upset each other, with where we take our speech and a willingness to return to center and to lift each other up and heal each other, more importantly, and interact with the universe and its living magic on the universe's actual living magic terms, we might actually not destroy ourselves. from the forthcoming imaginary album that may or may never drop, entitled New Epoch Volume 0. That was The Living Beats Be Back, produced by DJ Zed. Soulful Piano 101 Remix Live. Now, loading the next chapter from New Epoch Volume 2, DJ Zed, Drum Step 101 Remix Live. Thanks for tuning in, folks. May peace, love, and grooviness fill your hearts and minds.